Welcome to New Realities. My name is Alan Steinfeld. Today I'm in Sedona at the Sacred Geometry Conference, and I'm talking to one of the featured speakers, Nicholas Mann. He's an author and a lecturer. He's an expert on geomancy and the landscape temples. We'll be basically talking about the landscape temples, and he's a specialist in studying particular cities of Glastonbury, Sedona. He's also writing a book about Washington, D.C. Thank you, Nicholas, for being here.
Oh, you're welcome.
Landscape temples, that word, there are special places on the earth, obviously, that people have always gone to for retreats and to regenerate their bodies. I think Sedona is one of them, probably Glastonbury. But what's your definition of a landscape temple?
A sacred place, a place where it's possible to come into greater resonance and harmony with the earth. Mm-hmm. And native peoples have always had traditions of these special places, mm-hmm. and went to them, maybe just for reflection, maybe just for that overview of things.
But is there something resonant within the human being that they recognize these places? I mean, what is it? How does one person know they're in a sacred place?
I think there is an inner recognition, even if externally the place might have been covered over. There is still an internal energy that can be recognized, can be felt, can be worked with, and can be restored. And uncovered.
Well, I know in Sedona I feel as if I'm being bathed in something. I feel a comfort here that I don't in other places. So this is sort of a natural temple in the sense. But people have built temples to also create that environment.
Yes.
Are you looking to see the man-made and the natural in harmony together? I mean,
that's right, and it is a question of how we can work with the natural landscape. And usually what happens is that the place is initially recognized for its natural properties, its natural features. Streams, springs, special trees, anything.
Rocks too, the red rocks of Sedona.
Yes, I mean the beauty of a place, though it doesn't necessarily have to be beautiful. Sometimes the most powerful places can be very austere. And generally the key to understanding that you're in such a place is the name of the place. These places can have a name that was established a long time ago, and they'll usually have a mythic story associated with them. For example, here in Sedona, this was the place where the first woman came up from the previous worlds in the Yavapai tradition.
I didn't know that.
And eventually she had a grandson, and the grandson went up into the heavens, and he had the sun medicine and the cloud medicine put in his body. And when he came back down to earth, he came on the lightning flash, the story says. But when he got back down to earth, he was so huge, he stretched from one end of the red rock country to the other.
Wow.
And he pressed his body into the earth, and where the medicine was, in either side of his body, there the medicine plants grew. So for the Yavapai people, this was a sacred place where they would come to gather up the medicine plants. But look at that image. Look at the image of a gigantic figure stretching from one end of the Red Rock country to the other. Wow. So there's a foot, and there's a center, and there's a heart, and there's a throat, and there's the other centers, and a crown. So we're establishing a resonance here between the natural landscape and the human body.
Very interesting. Is there also a similar story in Glastonbury about it being a mythic place?
The different sacred places have different properties. And whereas here in Sedona, the imagery and the mythos is about earth and sky coming together, Glastonbury is about the Isle of the Dead.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
It's a gateway between the worlds.
Ah.
All the mythology of Glastonbury is about transitioning. There's the legends of King Arthur.
Yeah.
When he was mortally wounded, he went to Glastonbury, the ancient Isle of Avalon. And there he crossed over to the other side, where he is not dead, but sleeps, waiting to come back. So the same place where he crossed over is where he will come back. So there's a portal between the worlds on the Isle of Avalon that is concerned with incarnation and excarnation, quite different to what happens here in Sedona.
So if we look at it in terms of consciousness, how did these native people, well, they created the myths around something they felt internally in their psyche. Is that how it came about? I mean, how is it perceived? Because they are picking up energies, and then they are incorporating that into a myth, and then the people are then tuning into that and healed in a certain way. How do they know, is what I'm really asking. How they...
You know, we have so many subtle sensibilities that go beyond the obvious ones of the sight, sound, taste and touch. And I think it's the tuning in of those subtle sensibilities to the finer qualities that create this resonance between the human body, the human temple, and the natural temples of the earth. And when we have found those places, there is this universal tendency to want to create a temple there, to want to amplify and work with those natural energies so that it increases the subtle qualities of the human body. I mean, what we're going for is enlightenment. Really.
Yes, and these places in nature are helping us.
That's right.
Yeah, you know, the original meaning of temple was reflection of the stars in Greek. You know, so the places on the earth were reflections, templates of the heavens.
That's right.
And so we're trying to get back to this consciousness that lifts us off the earth, basically.
You know, on earth, the sky, the stars, are the symbol of the infinite. You know, in this dimension, perceiving through the senses that we perceive through, what better symbol of the infinite than the stars and the heavenly bodies? So one of the primary appearances of the temple is when we bring the heavenly order down into the terrestrial order, and thus establish harmony between the human form, the earthly form, and the heavenly form.
It also goes back to the idea that the infinite is out there as well as in here. You know, the human is an infinite being in its depth of capabilities, of consciousness, where we can go so far in to the void within ourselves and out just as equally. So I understand that idea of reflection.
Yes.
But getting back to the landscape, you know, Sedona has natural beauty. It seems like people cannot improve upon the mountains here, but yet in Glastonbury and other places they have created man-made temples to accentuate the natural landscape. So, but why do you think they do it in some places and not in others?
Well, it all depends on your approach. I mean, for example, in Britain and Europe, in the 4th and 3rd millennium BC, there was a whole impulse to build the megalithic sites, the stone circles, like the first stages of Stonehenge, for example. And these were places that attuned to the sacred, that brought the heavenly ratios down into the terrestrial order. But come the 2nd and the 1st millennium BC, there was a reaction to that. And the Celtic people with the Druidic priesthood said, no, we don't want to have anything to do with those earlier megalithic sites. We're going back to nature. We're going to worship at the springs and the sacred groves. So different cultures work with the landscape in different ways. And sometimes it's necessary to bring the right energies through to build a temple, an external temple.
Yes.
And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just enough to go to the natural site. And the native peoples here in Sedona felt no need to build anything here. Right. It was simply enough to be in the natural landscape.
Right. So this idea then of consciousness, and what you said, for instance, that you just always knew you were a geomancer. You started to remember. What was it that you were remembering? How did you get into this line, and what triggered it for you?
I think it was Plato who said that all knowledge is remembrance. And there's a clue there, because the dimension that we perceive with the physical senses is only a very narrow spectrum of the energies that we know is present in the universe. And in fact, we have a form that is far greater than that of the body. People say
energetically. Yeah.
People say the body has a soul.
Yes.
But no. The soul has a body. We kind of have it the other way around. And in coming into this body, we've come from a greater dimension, from a greater place. And I know that might be difficult for some people to accept and think about, but I'll just give you this thought to perhaps help illustrate this idea. Science teaches us that we see because light enters the lens of the eye, is picked up on the retina at the back of the eye, where it's converted into neurological impulses that the brain digests and informs consciousness of what it's seeing. This is completely back to front.
That's not how it really is.
No.
Okay.
Consciousness sees.
From the vastness that it is.
We don't need an eye to see. And anyone who's had a near-death experience, an out-of-body experience, or even in the dreaming state, you're not seeing with the physical eye. You're seeing with consciousness. And it is the power of sight, that power of consciousness to see, the energy of seeing that gathers to itself the brain, the eye, the lens, and even the light that's coming in.
But why did we need the physical forms if we actually saw it all anyway? What was the purpose of this?
To experience dense, compact matter. That's the point of having a body. We made an agreement when we came into this body that we would have this dense physical experience, because there's nothing else quite like it in the universe. There's a price to pay.
Yeah.
There's a price of forgetfulness, and there's a price of some pain in coming into the body. But the experience of having a body is ecstatic.
It is. You don't get this anyplace else, any other dimension. And also the benefits, the rewards of the body. I mean, the price to pay is balanced out by the rewards that are gained in consciousness from the experience we have in physical form. Would you say that?
That's right. The universe, by definition, is infinite. By definition.
Yes.
We live in an infinite universe. That means everything must exist. There must be the infinite realm. There must be the dense, compact, finite, manifest realm. And what we do as eternal beings coming into existence again and again is we go through every dimension of existence. The point of incarnating in every dimension is to understand every realm. And when we come in to this dense form, there's a sense in which we love it. We can love it.
I like it. It's nice
almost as if we can transfigure it and make the earth itself an exquisite reflection of the divine beauty.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. Because we are living in the earth. These bodies are earth bodies.
Yeah, get used to it.
I personally have a good time in my earth body. And the temples and the landscape are then a further extension of this body.
That's right.
I see.
That's
I
right.
see.
That's right. We could live on an earth that is transfigured.
What would that look like?
It would be. We would become like gardeners, where we would draw out the intrinsic natural energies of every place, so that each place achieved its full harmonic resonance with the cosmos. And we would create cities that would be exquisite. They would have stellar forms, solar forms, galactic forms.
What does that mean, stellar forms, solar forms?
They would be star cities on the surface of the earth.
But what would that look like? What would be the description of a star city? What would it have?
It depends upon the energies, the qualities that particular city was attuning to. I talked about how Avalon was particularly concerned with the incoming of souls and the outgoing of souls. And to do that would require establishing a particular geometrical pattern on the earth, whereas Sedona, because it's about embodiment and appreciation of the body, there's a different geometrical form.
Right.
And so these different and exquisite geometrical patterns that bring us into harmony with the cosmos would be different for each city, each location upon the earth.
And they are in a way anyway, but they haven't been activated. Because if we look at the earth like Sedona, Glastonbury, as a totality of the planet, each has its own particular reason for being, its own part in creation.
Yes.
Your part of your job is to figure out, I think, which city is doing what.
Yes, and the beautiful thing is that it actually doesn't require much figuring out at all.
Okay.
It's as though there are two approaches to sacred geometry and geometry. You can come at it from the outside and create these complex, logical, mental patterns, and then try imposing them on the earth. And it's really difficult to do, and it's incredibly expensive, because it's like you're going against the grain of things. Or you can come at it from the inside.
Yeah.
And there the energy, the pattern comes up from within, and you learn how to go with the flow.
Well, can you describe that, let's say in Sedona, how it came, the understanding of the earth energies came to you from within yourself? Let's describe some of the things that you've understood here from this internal place.
Well, I had the good fortune, when I first came to Sedona, to work with a musician, Annie Williams. And we went round the landscape together, and she would just sing whenever she had the opportunity and bring through tones. And it was through intuitively bringing through the tonal resonances, the quality of each place, that allowed me to work in the way I work, which is a much more visual way. The energy, establish the energy of each place.
Of each particular, what they have here is vortexes or...
So she would bring out the tones, the resonances that you can hear just by coming into stillness, coming to center, and really listening. And through that, through listening to the vibrational qualities, I was able to see them in visual, energetic terms.
And then you've also, from that, mapped out certain grid patterns or geometric forms that you overlaid over the Sedona landscape. And that takes a little bit more of a left brain approach, right?
Well, no, I like to think these figures emerged out of the landscape.
Okay.
The first woman who was said to have come up into the Sedona landscape emerges at the center of the geometrical figure of a pentagram, a 5-pointed star.
How do you know that it's a pentagram?
Well, because the key sites of Sedona, the so-called vortex sites, if you look at them on a map, they lie on the circumference of a circle, which divide the circle into 5. And right at the center of the pentagram is a rock called the Madonna Rock. And The pentagram, with its five-sided, five-pointed geometry, is all about the ratio of the golden section, the ratio of phi. And this is a generative ratio.
Yeah.
So this is about giving birth. It's the number, the ratio that nature herself uses in the unfoldment of form. The way leaves arrange themselves.
Yeah, the
around a
Fibonacci
twig.
curve, yes.
So this is a generative figure. So as the first woman came up here, it made sense that she would come up inside the generative figure of the pentagram.
So somehow these forms and consciousness and our deep mythic understanding are all interconnected.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
Yes. And it requires simply being with it, being still, letting go perhaps of the mental patterns that we try to impose, and letting the energies come up from inside.
But what does it mean for us to know that this figure's inside a pentagram? How does the pentagram then relate to consciousness, or how do all these forms relate to consciousness in particular? What's the pentagram significance?
Well, there's an experience. There's an inner energy experience that is possible to have, because as well as the physical body, we have an energy body. That energy that I was talking about, that is behind sight, that is consciousness itself. And we talk about it when we talk about the mortal coil.
Yes.
This is the energy body that comes into the mortal coil and gathers to itself the physical form. Now, when we're in the energy body, when we sit and are still and focus on the inner energetic forms, these appear to us as geometric patterns.
Oh, they do. They appear to consciousness as geometry.
Yes.
That's the connection between consciousness and geometry.
So, for example, you sit in meditation, you bring up energy up the spine, it comes through the throat chakra to the brow chakra, and it's very, very easy to see these energy centers as horizontal fields with geometric patterns radiating through them.
Because that's how they actually do exist on higher levels of perceptions and consciousness.
That's right.
Does this have to do with the spherical understanding of reality that you've been accused of talking about?
Yes. This is a theory that is recently coming back to my attention.
Yes.
And it's a very nice theory, because it first emerged in the 19th century.
Okay.
When there were two competing paradigms for understanding the nature of matter. There was the atomic theory that wanted to divide everything into smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller particles.
Right.
And there was the vortex theory that said, no, matter isn't made up of tiny little particles. Matter is made up of energy in motion.
Yes.
And you know how a wheel, when it spins faster and faster, it achieves stability?
Yes.
Well, the theory goes is that when energy moves in a vortex pattern, for example, imagine a spherical contra-rotating vortex, it achieves stability and it achieves a form without any need for there to be tiny little particles inherent within it. So this view of reality being made up of energy moving in vortex patterns, I think is a paradigm that is reappearing in quantum physics, especially in string theory, where they're realizing that they're never going to find these tiny little particles.
Like it's infinitely small.
It's energy in motion that we need to be looking at. Now, just for a moment, one of the beauties of thinking of all physical bodies as spherical vortices is that we get away from this idea that objects have a boundary, a limit. If objects are energy in motion, it's much easier for us to understand that the energy can extend outwards.
Right.
And that in fact every spherical vortex that makes up every living thing has an energy field which generates time and space. So time and space are not external qualities between things, they are emergent fields generated from things.
Right.
So for example, a galaxy generates time and space, and in relationship to an adjacent galaxy, which is also generating its own time and space, conventional science says there's this vast empty distance.
Where there's no time and space.
Which science says is a vast, we cannot possibly traverse it, in a spaceship. Well, of course you can't. But because it is an emergent field, and you're absolutely right, between those galaxies there is no time. There is no space, because they are an emergent property of the spherical vortices, in this case a galaxy, that we're talking about.
And then there's an interaction between vortices, between vortexes and vortexes.
That's right.
And that interaction then must create a third thing, a Vesica Pisces type understanding with the intersection.
You're really hot there. You're getting close to an understanding of the primary nature of creation. When the two vortices of energy and matter meet, they create a third spherical vortex, which is sensitive to incoming energies. And if you think about, say, the union of a man and a woman in love to create a child, what they're creating there is a spherical vortex of which the sperm and the egg are only the external manifestation. What they're doing is creating an energy form which is sensitive to the galactic influences at that moment and brings them in. And this is what science calls the double helix, but it's actually an energy form which brings in the new life, the new cosmic being.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So that double helix is really a symptom of the spherical vortices of the galaxy itself.
That's correct.
It exists in relationship to that larger being, that we are small vortexes inside that.
That's right. And what we're learning to do now with the landscape temples is attune to new energetic imprints and bring them in to the temples of Earth, so that a greater resonance is established within ourselves.
Is it because we are now energetically going to another level within, let's say, chaos theory, where the systems break down and reform at a higher pattern of complexity?
That's right.
That's what's happening right now. We're breaking down and reforming to a higher level.
That's what we're heading toward.
And we're bringing in new patterns.
That's right. It's quite a time.
Very exciting stuff. We'll talk more at some later day as this work evolves and as people kind of start to grasp these ideas. When I start to digest them, it's a lot, because it's not just sacred geometry. People think about triangles and squares. This is far vaster, far more connected to energy and consciousness.
It's hot. It's a living thing. I mean, sacred geometry is of great sex,
It's great. If people want to get in touch with you, tell people how they can reach you.
The best thing to do is just put my name on the internet. Just go to your search engine, put my name.
Nicholas Mann. Is that R. Mann?
That's right, Nicholas R. Mann, and you'll find my books and what I'm up to, my lecture programs and so on.
Nicholas will be speaking around the country in England, and he's also the author recently of The Energetic Secrets of Glastonbury Tour, and he's coming out with a new book called Sedona.
Sacred Earth.
Sedona, Sacred Earth, and he's working on a new book of about Washington, D.C., and the sacred geometry that's created in Washington, D.C. That was
Yes.
And New York City, Manhattan was created with sacred geometry. Did you know?
Was it really?
Well, the streets, the grids, the east-west streets were connected to the setting sun of the summer solstice and the rising sun of the winter solstice to give you the greatest amount of light. So the whole grid of Manhattan is created on sacred geometry of the Earth-Sun relationship.
So there's a heavenly resonance established there, and this is good.
I would think a lot of the ancient cities have been as well. And thank you for your work. Very exciting.
Oh, you're welcome.
Very exciting. Thank you so much. This is Alan Steinfeld for New Realities, and I hope you tune into other programs on emeraldenergies.com, emerald-energies.com. Thank you for watching. If you want to reach me, I'm at 212-473-6388, or you can check my website, newrealitiestv.com. Thank you.